Welcome to this explainer. You know, if you've been following the tech world lately, you probably think the artificial intelligence race is all about writing smarter code, right? We hear about larger context windows, more capable assistants, faster software updates, but actually, scratch that. That entire phase of the AI war, it's already over. We are currently looking at a complete paradigm shift, moving from a battle of software into a massive physical infrastructure war. And today we're talking about a story so huge it literally defies belief. We're looking at the creation of a $500 billion AI megacity. Okay, let's dive into this. For the longest time, the question on everyone's mind was simply, how do we make the AI smarter? But the real question we have to ask ourselves right now is, what comes after the chatbot? Because the era of building smarter algorithms in a cozy Silicon Valley office is pretty much coming to an end. The smartest engineers in the world can write absolutely brilliant code, but it's completely useless if you don't have the physical engine to actually run it.
Think of it this way. The old AI race was defined by software, algorithms, and code. But the new AI race? It is entirely defined by electricity, land, and massive industrial infrastructure. Right now, power availability and physical acreage are the true bottlenecks for artificial intelligence. Countries and companies aren't just competing for top programmers anymore. They're competing for stable electrical grids, massive construction capacity, and the actual physical dirt to house next-generation computing.
To understand just how extreme this shift has become, let's talk about 10 gigawatts. That's the planned capacity for a sprawling new AI hub in Piketon, Ohio. To put that into perspective, most modern hyperscale data centers measure their power in hundreds of megawatts. 10 gigawatts? That is enough electricity to power millions of homes. We're talking about enough juice to run maybe your entire state. This isn't just a building with some servers tucked away, it is a full-blown industrial city built exclusively for artificial intelligence.
But, as you can imagine, to build a city, you need unprecedented capital. And that brings us to this staggering figure, $250 billion. Now, this isn't the cost of the chips or the concrete. This actually represents a financial guarantee from NVIDIA. Yes, NVIDIA, the hardware giant. They are stepping in to act as the massive financial engine making this entire Ohio project possible, essentially becoming the world's most powerful tech bank. It's a completely mind-bending financial maneuver, which we'll break down shortly, but it just goes to show you exactly how high the stakes have become. When you combine the land, the power plants, the infrastructure, and the millions of GPUs that will eventually fill the halls of this campus, the total potential cost could exceed $500 billion. Let that sink in for a second. $500 billion. This public-private partnership is cementing itself as one of the most expensive technology infrastructure projects in human history. And the location they chose for this megacity is honestly deeply poetic. We're looking at a 3,700-acre site in Pike County, Ohio. During the Cold War, this exact spot was the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant, a federal site that enriched uranium for America's nuclear weapons program for nearly 50 years. The strategic asset of the 20th century was uranium. Now, that exact same soil has been reborn as the Port's Technology Campus, breaking ground on March 20, 2026. Because the strategic asset of the 21st century is compute. By 2028, they plan to activate the first phase at 800 megawatts, officially transforming a former nuclear weapons site into the epicenter of the AI revolution. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of what is happening in Ohio. The combined footprint of all currently known Stargate AI sites totals around 7 gigawatts. But this single campus in Ohio, it clocks in at 10 gigawatts, all by itself. This one facility completely dwarfs the ambition of previously announced infrastructure projects. We are no longer talking about building a single supercomputer. We are talking about engineering entire AI-powered industrial regions. So let's move on and see how this builds into the core philosophy driving all this madness. Every new generation of frontier AI models requires exponentially more computing power. Every single time you ask a chatbot to write an email or generate a funny image, you are pulling from this grid. Training massive models, running scientific simulations, generating high-fidelity video, it all consumes insatiable amounts of electricity. Power is the new gold. Because at the end of the day, without electricity, there is no intelligence. Which brings us to the great financial mystery of this explainer. If this massive facility is being built primarily for OpenAI so they can scale their next-generation models, why does the creator of ChatGPT need $250 billion in credit backing from its hardware supplier, NVIDIA?
Seriously, why is a chip maker suddenly acting as a megabank?
Now, what's really eliciting about this slide is the bizarre but brilliant public-private partnership funding this massive industrial city. Look at this financial triangle. You have OpenAI acting as the anchor tenant, wanting to lease the entire campus for 20 years. Then you have SoftBank acting as the developer, orchestrating the construction. The US government is the actual landowner. And finally, you have NVIDIA acting as the guarantor. See, SoftBank needs debt financing to build this $500 billion dream, and lenders, well, they need an ironclad guarantee that the rent will actually be paid. And this is exactly where a financial strategy called the credit wrap comes into play. Despite its massive fame and meteoric rise, OpenAI is still technically a private company operating at a loss, and crucially, it lacks an investment-grade credit rating. Lenders are simply not going to hand over hundreds of billions of dollars on a promise. So NVIDIA is stepping up. NVIDIA is using its massive, cash-rich balance sheet to provide this credit wrap, essentially co-signing the 20-year lease and project debt so that SoftBank can secure the funds to start pouring concrete.
But why would NVIDIA take on that kind of risk? Well, it's a masterclass in ecosystem lock-in. Step 1, NVIDIA guarantees the lease. Step 2, this ensures that OpenAI actually has the physical space and that 10 gigawatts of power required to operate. Step 3, because OpenAI now has that space and power, they are in a position to buy up to $350 billion worth of NVIDIA's upcoming next-generation chips, specifically the Vera Rubin architecture. NVIDIA is evolving from just manufacturing GPUs to acting as the central financial architect. They are literally underwriting the building just to ensure their tenant can buy their hardware. It is a completely closed-loop system.
Of course, getting that hardware powered requires infrastructure on a scale we've barely seen outside of national grids. Just look at the energy requirements here. They're building a $33.3 billion natural gas fleet, delivering 9.2 gigawatts of capacity. The government actually describes this as the largest gas-fired power facility in history. And then throw in another $4.2 billion in transmission upgrades. The scramble for electricity is so intense right now that U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is personally allocating power rights, taking meetings with tech giants who are practically begging the government for grid access.
Zooming out to the macro level for a second, we see that advanced AI is now being treated strictly as national infrastructure. It's heavily tied to geopolitics. This Ohio megacampus is actually part of a much broader $550 billion US-Japan trade agreement, backed by $3.3 billion in initial funding straight from Japan. And locally, there's a heavy emphasis on Midwest economic revitalization. They've pledged $40 million for Pike County and instituted a ratepayer protection pledge to shield local residents from skyrocketing utility costs. So balancing the needs of global AI dominance with local community impact, it's a massive tightrope act.
But beneath the geopolitical alliances and all this cutting-edge tech lies a massive, hidden risk. By co-signing OpenAI's lease, NVIDIA is putting a $250 billion contingent liability on its own financial statements. This is the systemic risk holding the entire deal together. A hardware manufacturer acting as a financier of this magnitude, it threatens to completely reshape corporate risk models across the board.
So the crucial point is how this plays out in the real world. In the best-case scenario, the AI boom maintains its current crazy trajectory. OpenAI gets unparalleled computing power, SoftBank collects guaranteed 20-year rent, and NVIDIA sells hundreds of billions in GPUs. Everyone wins, right? But what about the worst-case scenario? What if growth slows down? What if the AI models don't monetize as fast as expected? This circular financing model amplifies the fragility of the entire AI supply chain. Because if OpenAI struggles to pay the rent on that massive capacity, NVIDIA is left holding the bag for $250 billion.
We are witnessing the ultimate high-stakes gamble here. An atomic city of the Cold War has been reborn to fuel the AI revolution, and the biggest players in tech have pushed all their chips right to the center of the table. But it leaves us with this final towering question. If the AI boom slows even slightly, what happens when this $250 billion house of cards falls? Are we building the unshakable foundation of the future, or are we financing a bubble so large it literally requires its own power grid? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the infrastructure being built around you.